Hey everyone, how are you doing this evening? Just thought I'd come on again and share a little bit about some things that are going on in my life and things I've been thinking about and as I finished my schooling a couple of weeks ago, I just kind of been pondering what it is that it's in store for me and what the good Lord wants me to go, what direction He wants me to take, and so yeah, I was down at the beach tonight just thinking, and I often sit down there and I look at the waves, and it kind of reminds me of life. You know, the ocean can be calm one minute and then all of a sudden a storm hits. And I kind of look at that as life. There are going to be times in our life where everything's going smooth and we're feeling good about ourselves, and our jobs are going good and our family lives are going good. And then all of a sudden the storms hit and we panic, or we try to figure out what it is that we need to do. And sometimes we get so consumed with worry and despair and no hope that we often lose focus in what it is that we can do to ride the storm. As if I think about a boat that's on that ocean when the storm hits, there's only a couple things they can do, um, and that's ride the storm out and head for calmer places, head for shore if they can do it. And then they just got to ride it out, like I said, and then, pray about it. So have you ever thought about, and asked this question, what would it look like if I grew up in a normal home? And what does it look like? If I grew up in a home where two parents loved one another, they respected one another, um, and they showed that respect. And as kids, we grew up watching our parents' love for one another and their love that they had for their kids. And then we got the other spectrum where we grow up and we didn't have that. We had no parents that loved and respected. They were always fighting, and sometimes it got physically violent. And we witnessed that as kids. And then our parents ended up getting divorced. Or we were abused as kids. And we used to think, wow, these people are supposed to love me. And they're abusing me physically, mentally, and even sometimes sexually. And then we grow up and we wonder what we can do with all this. I was thinking about it today, and it's like somewhere in my life, I had to make that choice. Yeah, it sucked. I didn't get the love and the respect and the nurturing and the protection that I got supposed to get from my parents. But I made a choice, as I've shared many times, that if I was ever going to be a parent, that I wasn't going to make the same mistakes my parents made. So here's a good example. Now that I'm older and now that I'm in the place that I am in, I can look back and say, okay, I didn't have the love, the unconditional love when I was growing up. So I made a choice that I was going to do the exact opposite for my kids, that I was going to do everything I could to let them know that they're loved and that they had a voice and that it was my job to protect them. See, that was my purpose. That's what we're supposed to do as parents. But sometimes we become parents and we do exactly the same thing our parents do. So, what was the difference for me? And why do I do the things that I do? See, I witnessed some pretty terrible things as a kid. Not only between my parents, but things that happened to me and to my family. And then I knew at a very young age that I was different and that I had a calling in my life, and I didn't know what that calling was. I can remember at 12 years old leaving the church and knowing that I was going to come back and that I had a purpose in my life. But I had to go on this journey to find that purpose. See, many people go through life struggling day after day, month after month, year after year, trying to figure out who they are and where they should be going and what's their purpose in their life. There was a young lady, well, she wasn't young, she was in her 40s, that I was her sponsor. And she didn't have any of that. She was treated terribly as a child and ended up having some responsibilities of taking care of some of her siblings at a very young age. And then she went through life not feeling loved and not knowing what her purpose was. But this person loved her children, but she just couldn't figure it out. And so, because I went through that in my life, I decided that I was going to do everything I could to make those people out there that never had any love or that never had any respect feel loved. That's what I decided to do. After all I went through, like I shared before, I stopped asking why. What is it that I can do when I go through things in my life? Oh man, there's so many things going on right now in my world that I don't really understand. And I'm just baffled, and sometimes it brings me to tears. And I wonder why they happen. And then I have to stop and ask myself, okay, what can I do? So in the end, this person never met their potential. This person was such a loving and caring individual who got a crappy deal out of life. Which is very sad. But if there's one thing I hope that came out of all that, that she knew that I loved her. Because that's all I could do. People, life sucks. We often sit there and say, I didn't ask to be brought into this world. Why did I get treated that way? Or why did my parents act that way towards each other? See, we have a choice we can make right there. If we recognize those things, not to make the same mistakes that our parents made. So first of all, we try and work on ourselves, better ourselves before we get into a relationship and we get married. Try to deal with everything that we have to deal with. Find a way to feel comfortable about who you are and where you're going and your purpose in life, and learn how to love yourself. Because if you don't love yourself, how do you expect anybody else to? And what I mean by that, you have a different outlook on life if you learn to love yourself. If you learn to love yourself, then you can learn to love others in a healthy, respectful way. You can learn how to love your husband, learn how to love your wife. But if you haven't gotten that figured out, then it's a good idea to try to figure out the best you can. Nobody's perfect. We're never going to find a perfect mate. But with God's help, you can work together and you can work on yourselves. When I was a kid, I used to cry myself to sleep some nights because I just couldn't understand why life is the way it is. And then I got older and I realized that I could take that situation, I could turn it around, and I could do something for somebody. First of all, because I understood. And second of all, I just want to show them the love that I never got. And hopefully that'll help them. Hopefully that'll heal them in some way. Make them feel like they have some meaning and some hope in their life. Things happen for a reason. And sometimes those things really suck and they just don't make any sense. So what I had to do, instead of trying to figure out and try to make sense of it, I just did everything I could to heal myself and learn how to forgive. We're never going to forget. Because if we don't forgive, then we can't move forward. It's like a cancer, it'll eat us up. So I look for every opportunity to share God's love and my love to another individual that's hurting. Oh boy, because people, I know what it's like. And I know what it feels like not to be loved unconditionally. And I don't want anybody to feel that way like I did. So I do everything I can. So how can we take a terrible situation that we might be in right now, or maybe in the future, or we were in the past, and make something good out of it? We can ask that question over and over and over again. How would it have been if I had a normal family? Well, is there really a normal family out there? So how can I take those situations and learn how to deal with them in a healthy way? How can I take those situations and put it into something positive? First of all, if you have kids, don't make the same mistakes. And if you do, then correct them. And if you can't figure it out, go get some help. And always be there for your kids. Always listen to your kids. Always love your kids no matter what. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're going to start doing some things that your parents did, pick up the phone, call somebody, and say, listen, I need some help. So you don't make the same mistakes as your parents did. Excuse me, I'm just having some yogurt here. Before it melts. Sorry, people, I'm trying to make this as real as possible. Little humor here. So that's what I had to do. When my first son was born, I probably shared this as I found myself wanting to do something that my mother did to me as a kid. So the minute I felt that way, I picked up the phone, called my pastor, and I said, listen, I need some help. I need some prayer. So it was great, a godsend, because the church office was just up the road. So I walked there, told him what was going on. We prayed about it, and I never had any problems. A few times, and I would just stop myself and say, okay, Lord, help me with this. And this particular person I'm talking about, she has children. And it's going to be hard for them. And, I'll do whatever I can for them. In some ways, I wish I could say more, but out of respect for the family, I can't. Maybe one day I'll share a little bit more, but not, but I just don't want anybody to have to go through what she went through. I just want those that have gone through that to have a happy ending. Life gets tired at times. I had parents who didn't want to deal with their stuff. So at the end, they basically just gave up. I don't want to do that. I want to work till God doesn't give me any more breath to be the best person I can. Yeah, we're going to make mistakes. So, when we go through life and we don't make any changes, and we end up wondering, as life goes by, why didn't I make those changes? It's never too late, folks, to make changes. It's never too late to admit that you've got problems and you need to deal with them. Doesn't matter if you're 16 or you're 80. It's never too late to try to change them. The old saying, you can never teach an old dog new tricks. Well, whatever that's supposed to mean, but so, the mind is a powerful thing. And sometimes we have to change the way that we think, the way that we process things. We have to ask ourselves the question, well, like I shared before, is the way that we think, the way that we feel, is it working? And if it isn't, try to make some changes. Because I saw an old friend at a lacrosse game the other day, and he was sharing with me a couple years ago. He has a younger brother that he doesn't even talk to, and they're sitting at the arena, one standing up and the other one sitting below him, and they don't even talk anymore. All because of family stuff. I got a brother I don't even talk. I actually got two brothers I don't talk to. It's not by my choice. All to do with family stuff. Generational stuff that's been passed on from one generation to the next. The sin of our forefathers, So, I was sitting with my son today and we were talking. I was sharing a bit of stuff. I knew nothing about my father. Excuse me, I'm going to have some more yogurt. It's melting. Excuse me. And I don't share everything. I'm a pretty professional guy, aren't I? Anyways, gotta have a little humor. So, my dad shared very little with me, so I was sharing with my son some of my things that I did when I was younger, my drinking days and things like that. And I'm wondering how I even made it sometimes. But, so yeah. So we were talking about that and telling this young fella that works for me, that it's sometimes we don't know where our parents came from or what they had to go through. My parents' generation, they never talked about much. My mom had a very strict father. And my dad went through a lot of stuff that unfortunately he paid a price for it when he was older. But I didn't want to do that in my life. I wanted to succeed in everything that I was asked to do, or I felt that I was asked to do. And I just wanted to do the best that I could. And there were times that I failed and I made mistakes, but I learned from it. And I share those mistakes and those things that I've learned from it. See, we don't have to sit in that dysfunction that our families had. We can make choices to better ourselves. We can make choices to find that peace and that hope and that purpose. If we allow ourselves to feel, if we talk about it, and we work on our feelings, and we work on our thoughts, and our attitudes, and how we handle our problems. So that we can talk through all this stuff and figure out ways to make some healthier decisions. and to be able to move forward and not backwards. And there are times, we're going to take 2 steps backwards and 4 forward, but those 2 steps backwards sometimes are how we learn. What can we learn from our life experiences? Instead of sitting there feeling sorry for ourselves and drinking ourselves to death or doing drugs, what can we do to change those things, change our attitudes, so that we can have healthy, productive lives? I will never have that. I will never, but you know what? It's okay. I accept that. There's nothing I can do with it. There's 2 things I can do. I can wallow and feel sorry for myself and go back to the drinking, or I can take that and make it a positive thing and share with others to give them hope and to give them purpose and to show them if I can go get through it, they can get through it too. Or like I say, I could just throw my hands up in the air and just lock myself in my room and just slowly die. The choice was ultimately mine. Things are going to happen in our lives. We're going to lose people. Our friends are going to die. Our co-workers that we're close to or our mates are going to die. And how are we going to handle it? Those are the things that we got to teach our kids. When the storms of life come, don't give up. Where's our hope? Who do we find our hope in? It's not in money. It's not in a man. It's not in a woman. It's not in our education or the type of job we have or our friends. It's in God. Our hope in God is what's going to get us through it. So, I'm learning more and more about that. Boy, lately I've just been really tired with everything that's going on. Not getting enough sleep, and I don't always handle things right. And sometimes I get frustrated and mad at myself, but the other day I got frustrated, so I had to go to a couple of my employees and apologize. And that's fine, that's what we have to do. I was talking to my sister tonight. I went for a walk with her and we were talking about different things that happened when we were kids. And it's good to talk about those things. I don't let it control me. It's just good to talk about them, to have some clarity or some focus or whatever it is. Understanding. And, for some people it's hard to talk about those things. Me, it's not hard. Because we need to talk about them. That's how we get healthy. And our family never talks about a lot of things. I'm the talker. I have to talk because if I don't, then, it's trouble for me. That's one thing I've learned in my sobriety. You have to talk. You can't stuff it. That's what got me into trouble. You can't lock yourself in your house. Or you can't just, like I said, just lie down and give up. You got to fight. I keep going because I love my kids. I keep going because I love my wife. I keep going because I love my grandkids. I love my nieces and nephews. Yeah, it would be easy for me to just to lie down and just give up, but no, I'm a fighter. Always have been. So sometimes I just got to be quiet. Okay, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? What is it that you're trying to teach me? And most of the time, not all the time, I'll get some kind of a clarity. You know, when somebody dies, that's not the end. If they know the Lord, it's not the end. But sometimes I often wonder, how can we keep their memory alive? How can I keep my brother Ray's memory alive? He was my best friend. How can I keep that young lady's memory alive? So I think about the positive impact they made on people's lives. I watched this young lady, the way she talked to homeless people. Less fortunate when I would meet with her for coffee. Those are the things that keeps me going. Those are the things that wants me to press on in her memory, to share with other people the love that she had for people, the love she had for her kids. I keep going because I love my kids. They're my everything. When they hurt, I hurt. When they're happy, I'm happy. That's the way it's supposed to be. So those are the things that we can pass on to our kids. And you'd be surprised sometimes when you think, oh man, I'm a crappy parent, or they never learned anything from me, or and then you watch them as they have kids and how they relate to their kids. And for me, I just say thank you, Lord, for helping me be the father that I wanted to be and the father that you wanted me to be. As I watch my son with his son. Every time I'm with them, I watch him and I think, thank you, Lord, that he's the way. And where did he get that from? From me. And I don't take any credits. I give it all to God, but I didn't have that growing up. But I wanted that for my kids. So that was one of the legacies that I wanted to leave for my kids. So that's something positive that came out of all of it. And then I have people that worked for me and stuff like that. Some of the things they say. And it warms my heart because I don't do this to blow my own horn. I don't do this for self gratification or for, so I can wear a crown on my head. I just do it because it's who I am and I care. And this is what God has called me to do. And I give him all the glory. But it's nice when I hear them say that I made a difference in their life. And that's all I live for. That I could show God's love and his grace and his mercy. And that's all that matters to me. And that I hope that when they have struggles that they'll think about me and say, oh, I remember what Randy said or whatever it is, or the love that Randy had for me. That's all that matters for me. So I took something good or something bad and I made it into something good. Because that's the way that I wanted to be loved and respected. I could have turned around, been a real idiot growing up, or as an adult, been bitter and twisted, and been mean and unforgiving and hateful and despiteful, whatever. I could have done all that, but I chose not to. And sometimes I wonder if it's worth it. Because sometimes it wears me out, people, and I'll be honest with you. And sometimes I get treated like crap. And I say, why do I do this if I'm going to get treated that way? That's that person's problem, not mine. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. How did Jesus feel when he was beaten to death almost? So what I got to go through is nothing compared to what he went through for us. So that's my way of saying thank you to him. So when I see Bailey, a lady, walking the streets, strung out in drugs, and God says, go, Randy, go talk to her. I go talk to her. Ask her if she's hungry, if she's eaten, or if she needs something to drink. And she'll talk to me. And then she'll come back afterwards and say, yeah, I'll take you up and I got her something to drink. And then I would share with her that she's loved and that she was created in God's image and she's good. And she said to me, you're this, and then I say, can I pray for you? And she says, you're the second person today that's asked me that. But I just do what God tells me to do. There was a time I was working at a hospital and a little voice said, Randy, go over and talk to that girl. She's troubled. And I didn't. Next day, my boss came and told me she hung herself in her dad's basement. So ever since that, I listen. When he says, go, Randy, I go. So I prayed for Bailey. I don't know what kind of impact I'm going to have in her life. I don't know, but I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do. And I hope to God one day the light will come on. She say, oh, I remember that man that gave me something to eat and prayed for me. What a kind soul. So I just do what I'm supposed to do. Or the 18-year-old girl wandering around. Same thing. I was in my car sitting waiting for an appointment. I probably shared this with you. And I had a tug in my heart. So I saw her go in the parkade and I didn't go in there. I waited for her to come out. And I asked her if she was hungry and she said, yeah. I said, can I buy you something to eat? So we went and had some 18 years old, been on the street since she was 14, hooked on drugs. Was beat up, sexually molested. So we talked. I gave her my number. I've never heard from her, but I did what I was supposed to do. Oh, because I've been there. People, I've been there. As a young kid getting thrown outside, standing outside my house with my underwear on. And remembering being so embarrassed, hoping my friends wouldn't come by. Having to steal food because the food was locked up. So that's why I do what I do. Because I've been there. Now, there was a long period of time in my life where it almost cost me my life. Then I woke up and realized I'm better than this. And I can make those changes. So the end is that we look at those situations in our life, what we could have had and what we wanted, to make those choices, to have those things that we wanted, but not what I shared earlier. For your life, for your marriage to be different than what your parents' marriage was, for your kids' life to be better than what your life was. And there's no better joy than that, seeing your kids grow up healthy. And pray over them. Get together with the rest of your siblings and say, okay, you know what? I recognize the sins of our forefathers, the sins of our parents. Let's all agree to put a stop to this and pray about it. Pray against it. Say, get lost. And don't let it happen. All be in agreement. All recognize that it's a problem. We got to put a stop to it so that we don't pass it on to our kids. And sometimes some of those things are genetic, but we can change those things, like worry, anxiety, all those kind of things. We can change those in our own life before we pass it on to our kids. You know, so things like that, we can make a difference. So, you know, I hope these videos help, because that's why I do them. But I just wanted to share that with you because it's been heavy on my heart. You know, you've probably watched some of my videos and listened to my story. If I can do it, you can do it. Has life been easy? No, but it's a lot better than where I was before. So, as I always say, I hope you feel God's presence. I hope you feel His loving arms around you. And I hope you feel the peace and the hope that you deserve and the love that you deserve. And don't be hard on yourself. Give yourself a break. Life's a journey. We can't figure it all out in a year, 6 months, 2 years. It's a lifetime, but that's okay. As long as we learn from it and try not to make the same mistakes. And be willing to be humble and ask for guidance and direction. And pray about it. And talk about it. And talk to your kids when you make mistakes and say you're sorry. And remember, discipline your kids in love. And talk to them about that. You know? They need to know. You know, when they get a certain age, talk to them about your struggles and how you've got victory in them so that they can learn too. Okay, until we meet again, God bless you.